I remember my mom was working in London when I was a kid. So we had to go from, like 1971 Los Angeles to 1971 London. And I'm a kid, right? So the first thing a kid notices in 1971 London is you go from having a bunch of television stations to BBC One and BBC Two, right? And they're probably both showing, classical music performances. And my mother had a great line, though. She goes, if you grew up watching this, as opposed to the Saturday morning cartoons I was watching, you would develop an appreciation for it. But I'm almost wondering if there's the opposite, where if you are devoid of something for a long time, that you don't even know how much you might like something like a long-form podcast. In other words, it becomes novel because you don't see it. The simple rarity of encountering it creates an interest that otherwise we would be blasé about. So a generation raised on TikTok and Instagram and all these kinds of short form offerings, I wonder, I'm always told that they've lost the ability to appreciate it, but might it be 180 degrees different? Might it create an appetite simply because, here we have something new for you, but it's not really new, right? We got that once upon a time, but it's new to them.
Hey, look,
yeah.
Chuck, what do you always say about a joke?
No such thing as an old joke if you've never heard it before.
Right. That translates pretty nicely. What was it? Santa Ana, right? Those who don't learn from are doomed to repeat. People look around today and they just can't understand how we could possibly be in the same situation that we were in a generation or two or 5 or 10 or 50, right? We all have to discover the joke or the thing or the history in our own way. And so, yeah, that's all just a long way of saying my crystal ball is cloudy too, but I'm pretty certain that some mix of tactics and techniques and new discoveries and old chestnuts, all that stuff still matters today as it pushes us forward into whatever's next. I don't know, man. I don't know that I want you taking hardcore history and making it more accessible in a broadcast way. I don't know. It's the joy of discovering something as opposed to having it blasted out to you. It's the difference between buying a thing you find and love or being sold something simply because you were walking down the thoroughfare of, a souk or a farmer's market or a mall. It's different, We got to find you. And that was part of what was special. It was the same thing with Dirty Jobs. It was like a little secret. Nobody was promoting it. It was just kind of out there. And and then it got big. And then I became a sellout. And then I had to figure out. I took the filthy lucre.
You sold out way before Dirty Jobs.
That's true.
Did you?
But, this is actually a great point. When I mentioned earlier that I was not a very good talk radio show host, and part of it was because, and this sounds so weird, I don't know how to phrase this, and I'm not going to put on an act, right? And I'm not going to, they used to scream at me about not creating enough controversy and heat. Heat was the word that they liked at the time, right? Heat. Because heat creates engagement and heat makes people come back for more. And I didn't have a problem with creating real heat, but it was the artificial stuff, right? That was the problem. And so I feel like there's an authenticity that we're allowed to maintain because I don't have to meet with the promotion staff and boil down what we do to 7 or 8 adjectives that can be used to guide a staff who's going to write a promotional campaign about. We don't have any of that stuff. Now, what that means is we have no choice but to be discovered serendipitously, right? We might once upon a time. I'll tell you, this is how long I've been in podcasting. In about 2006, 2007, and we'd already been doing it a couple of years, I was trying to figure out how we could get the word out that there was anything even being offered. And I must have called 100 radio stations, and I wasn't stupid. I didn't call radio stations in New York and LA. I called public radio stations in like North Dakota, and no one would put us on. So then I bought a package of ads in college newspapers around the country, hoping that at least kids are technically savvy. They'll know. Nothing worked. And yet, if you'd have told me, oh, listen, if you'll just boil down your show to 7 or 8 pithy adjectives, we'll let it. I probably would have taken that deal once upon a time when we just needed listeners. Now I feel like it's this wonderful luxury we have that we can afford to be authentic because we've reached some level of critical mass where Mike Rowe's having us on his podcast, you know. But once upon a time, selling out might have been an option years ago, but nobody was buying. And now I'm in a position where I don't have to sell out because we managed to weather the storm long enough to still be here, I guess.
Well, the thing that I wanted to say to you, Dan, is that I believe that the people who are sniffing around your podcast to try to turn it into a TV show, they need you more than you need them. Finally. And you doing what you want, you being the creative, 800-pound gorilla that you are, you can do whatever you want now. You've got the platform to do it. You don't necessarily need their platform. They will try to turn it into something different.
I'm glad you say that, because half the time I scold myself for being lazy, for not pursuing more of these potential, because now they write all the time because there's this like dearth of content or something must explain it. But in the old days, I used to feel bad if I didn't at least pursue some of these things. Now I feel like, okay, as you guys know better than I do, it's a zero-sum game. You only have so much time, so much energy. And at this point, the 800-pound gorilla allows me to say, you know what? The smart move here is actually not following these TV opportunities. But that's not a luxury everyone has. I mean, that's the fortunate place we find ourselves in now.
And remember, too, the gorilla wasn't always 800 pounds.
No, not at all.
He spent a lot of time at 50, 60, bantamweight. Then he was 100, then 2, then 3. So there are a lot of animal kingdom metaphors here, but the frog in the boiling water is also a good one. You just wake up one day and look around and say, holy crap, it's hot in here. How did that happen? A little bit at a time. So now you're a big deal, dude.
But Mike, how much of this is timing, right? So if Dan Carlin is in the same position in 1978, right? I don't know. I mean, what am I doing? Xeroxing newsletters and putting them under people's windshield wipers at the supermarket, right? I mean, I guess
maybe, but if you are, you're making it interesting. You're doing it in a way that the other guy didn't do. If you're who you are back then, you're still looking for the reverse commute. You're still looking for a way to be a jagged little pill. You're still looking for a way to do the thing that other people are doing in a way that either amuses you or that's more efficacious. That's who you are, right?
I was gonna say, I hope you're right. I would like to think that that's the truth. Yes. I would hope
All right.
so.
Well, then how about this way? You talked about heat. Language is, it fascinates me, and it's so important. And the difference between heat and light is a distinction that I think a lot of people miss. They're easy to confuse. I look at heat not just as conflict, but as meaning, as meat on the bone. Light's easy. Light, you just shine it wherever it is and you can look at a thing. People are always attracted to different things at different times. The gorilla is never the same weight throughout the course of his life. Everything is always shifting, always changing. And that's just the reality of the industry we're in. But it kind of feels, too, like it's the reality of the topic that made you famous. This is what history is. And by the way, I said this to Chuck years ago, too. Your podcast could be called The Way I Heard It. Mine could not be called Hardcore History, because the way you've taken in so many different versions of what we think the past might be and woven it together into something that feels persuasive, that's talent, man. That's not slipping a flyer under a windshield wiper. That's a much more complicated trick. And if you ever want to change the name to The Way I Heard It, you can have it with my compliment.
I feel like Herodotus could have entitled his histories The Way I Heard It. That would work perfectly. It reminds me of what I was saying to you